Here are the modifications that I've made to my Aristocraft Mikado to use a 2.4 gigahertz transmitter instead of the old Aristocraft one, because I didn't want to use that. This is the sort of transmitter that I use for my roundhouse loco, so I just wanted to keep the same transmitter, and I just put another receiver, bound that to it. The way that it works is the original Aristocraft battery is under there, which is a 7.2 volt, I think. That is feeding this little DC to DC step down converter, which converts it to 5 volts for this receiver, because it's not a high voltage receiver. It can only take up to about 6 volts maximum. So that's running 5 volts at the moment. I've wired it into the main switch there, the original Aristocraft switch. So at the moment everything's off because it's in the back position. When I move it into the middle position, it'll switch the Aristocraft electrics on, and it will also provide power to the step down converter, which then feeds the receiver as normal. So I've wired it into, so the positive goes into this pin here, and I've just hot glued it in place. The ground goes to that ground point just there, so I've soldered them both on and just hot glued the wires so they stay in place. So when we switch it on, we get power. So I have underneath here, you can probably just see it, I've got a pair of servos. They have had the motors and gearboxes stripped out, that's why they've got no tops to them, and the wires from the motors that went to the motors for those servos now go into the loom here. So they go positive and power to the throttle and valve motors. So these are essentially, I'm using the original Aristocraft motors, but they are now being driven by the servos. So it's like having that motor in a conventional servo. It's just gone through a wire to make it remote. So now when I push this forward, that's the valve gear. You can see it moves. I don't know how it compares speed wise to the original Aristocraft, because I never ran it with the old transmitter, but I would imagine it's a little bit slower because the voltage is a bit lower. The motors will be operating a bit slower. This is the regulator, so move that and back again. And then on channel 3, which is that one there, I have this little MP3 custom module down here, and that's loaded with a Mikado whistle. So that is plugged into the receiver on channel 3 here, and also wired into the original speaker, which I've disconnected from the Aristocraft board because I didn't want any of the other sounds. So if I trigger this, there we go. So that's modern radio control for the Aristocraft tender. I wanted to leave all the original electronics in place for the time being, because I use it for the ignition and I'm using it for charging the battery, the Aristocraft battery. This thing here, by the way, is a heater, a programmable heater, which is heating the tank there electronically, and it's using a little thermostat sensor in there. That's all that is. But hopefully that's useful to somebody that may want to convert theirs. I don't know how it would work with a rotary handset, because I know that a lot of people use the handsets with 2 rotary dials. Yeah, your mileage may vary with that. I think you might need to use a regular servo in place of the regulator motor. So I think you would actually need a servo on here rather than use the setup I've got, because this relies on the limit switches at both ends. To stop, I have to move the switch like that, and I'm not sure you would be able to do that with a rotary dial. You may be able to, but just something to bear in mind. Anyway, hope that's helpful. Cheers.